Hey there, Heroes students! Welcome to this exclusive Explainer Bootcamp. I'm Mr. Reda Adel, and wow, I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide today. Look, if you're a first secondary student staring down that Upstream B2 English book and feeling, well, maybe just a little bit overwhelmed, take a deep breath. You are in exactly the right place. Today, we aren't just going to study for your second term exam. We're going to completely conquer it. We're breaking down the hardest parts of this curriculum and turning them into clear, visual, and super memorable lessons. By the end of our time together, you'll be walking into that exam room with absolute confidence.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at our roadmap to success today. We'll start with mastering everyday vocabulary, move into grammar rules made simple, explore the story of Pygmalion, and then tackle Pope's poetry. Finally, we'll reveal the top exam questions and finish up with your final pop quiz.
All right, Section 1, Mastering Everyday Vocabulary. Let's make those new words stick.
You know, for non-native English speakers, advanced idioms can honestly feel like a totally alien language. But take a look at these. These are actual, real exam questions pulled straight from your Upstream B2 model exams. We're targeting the exact vocabulary the examiners want you to know. See question number 7 right there? Let's zoom in and take a closer look at a phrase just like that one.
So here's a classic idiom that absolutely loves to hide in multiple choice questions. Pay through the nose. I mean, literally, it sounds painful and kind of ridiculous, right? But think about this. Imagine buying the absolute newest, most hyped-up smartphone on the very first day it's released. You're paying way, way more money than it's actually worth just to have it in your hands immediately. Well, that feeling of paying an excessively high price, that is paying through the nose. Connect that old idiom to that very modern feeling, and your brain is going to lock it in forever.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how exam writers love to test you on confusing legal vocabulary, like the difference between fined and sentenced, which you're going to see in the first vocabulary section of Model Exam 2. Let's make this super simple. If you, say, run a stop sign, and the police make you pay money, you are fined. It's like paying a heavy traffic ticket. But if a judge bangs a gavel and sends you to jail for months, you are sentenced. So fined is about money, sentenced is about time and punishment. See, simple, everyday analogies clear up that confusion instantly.
Moving right along to Section 2, Grammar Rules Made Simple. We're turning rules into formulas for success.
Okay, I know the rewrite the sentence section causes a lot of panic. But listen, stop thinking of grammar as these invisible, tricky rules, and start thinking of it like a mathematical formula. If you just follow the steps, you'll always get the correct answer. Let's break down an actual rewrite question from Model Exam 1. Step 1 gives us our original sentence, I regret losing Carol's phone number. The prompt asks you to use the phrase, I wish. So Step 3 is applying our formula. When we use wish to express regret about the past, we literally must use the past perfect tense. So Step 3 gives us our final, flawless answer. I wish I hadn't lost Carol's phone number. See what we did? We took a past action, losing the number, and just shifted it back one step into the past perfect. It isn't magic, heroes. It's just following the formula.
All right, Section 3, the story of Pygmalion. Let's get into some drama and character growth.
When we study this play, I really want you to imagine you're watching an intense blockbuster movie, one filled with massive egos, hurt feelings, and incredible character growth. Just listen to this exam quote spoken by Professor Higgins to Eliza. Well, don't you think, God, it's all over? Now you are free and can do what you like. I mean, try to hear the sheer theatrical arrogance in his voice there. He has just won his bet, passing Eliza off as a duchess. But instead of congratulating her for all her incredibly hard work, he just completely dismisses her. Imagine how infuriating that was for Eliza. She did all the heavy lifting, and he's treating the whole shebang like he just finished some boring chore.
So, the crucial point is that this arrogance perfectly sets up one of the most frequently asked exam questions. Why did Eliza throw the slippers at Higgins? Well, she felt completely ignored and entirely used. Higgins took absolutely all the credit for the success of the bet. Plus, she was terrified of her uncertain future. I mean, where does a flower girl go after pretending to be royalty? Ultimately, she lashed out because she realized she was being treated merely as a scientific experiment rather than a living, breathing human being. Remember these complex emotional motivations, and you are going to easily ace the literature section.
Let's transition to Section 4, Exploring Pope's Poetry, specifically his essay on criticism.
Now, I get it, looking at 18th century classical poetry can completely make your eyes glaze over. And this is exactly how the poem appears on your test pages. But listen,
When you see this block of Old English text, do not let it intimidate you. The examiner isn't expecting you to speak like an 18th century philosopher. They just want you to identify the specific tools Pope used to build his arguments. So let's see how this builds into our first major definition.
The absolute most important tool you need to memorize here is the heroic couplet. It's simply a pair of lines that rhyme, written in a specific rhythm, and used heavily by Pope to make a really sharp, memorable point. If you see a question asking you to define Pope's style, this right here is your golden ticket. It is a guaranteed literature question that you simply must have locked in your memory for test day.
So, when you're actually reading the poem on the exam, I want you to become a detective. Actively look for these three things. First, heroic couplets, those neat rhyming pairs we just talked about. Second, visual images. For example, look at how Pope contrasts the powerful ocean gains with dry, sandy plains to create a vivid picture right in your mind. And third, epigrams. These are those short, clever sayings that sound like really profound quotes. If you can spot these three tools, you pretty much mastered Alexander Pope.
Moving on to Section 5, Top Exam Questions Revealed. This is all about reading comprehension.
You know, a lot of students lose so much precious time trying to perfectly translate every single word of a massive paragraph. But that is not the goal. Instead, you need to outsmart the test. For instance, if you get the passage about the Titanic disaster, the trick is to skim the text purely for specific dates, depths, and casualty numbers, because that's exactly what the questions will target. If you get the passage on latchkey children, you need to look for cause and effect relationships, like why are the kids home alone, and what happens because of it. Or if it's the TV addiction text, your job is to identify the author's underlying bias against modern media. You see, you just match the passage topic to the correct solving strategy.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. Even from a distance, your eyes should naturally jump right to the numbers in the Titanic text. 153 kilometers, April 14, 1912. 16 watertight compartments, 1,513 died. You do not need to read this like a beautiful, flowing narrative. You need to hunt for the specific data points the questions will inevitably ask you to recall. Skim, locate, and answer.
All right, Section 6, your final pop quiz. It's time to test those skills. You've made it to the final arena. It's time to test your freshly leveled up knowledge before the real deal. So here is a rapid-fire vocabulary check pulled directly from Model Exam 6. Fill in the blank. His donation is a blank in the ocean compared to the amount that is needed. Okay, is it a drop, a soup, a sun, or a tea in the ocean? Wherever you're watching this explainer right now, I want you to literally shout the answer out loud. Think about our everyday analogies. What is tiny compared to something massive?
Yes, the answer is a drop in the ocean. Just like one single tiny drop of water is totally insignificant when compared to the vast sea, this donation, while nice, is just tiny compared to the massive amount of money actually needed. If you got that right, you're proving that these analogies really do work.
Okay, now for your literature check. Listen to this incredibly insulting quote from Pygmalion. I tell you, I have created this thing out of the squashed cabbage leaves of Covent Garden. All right, who said this? Think back to the intense dynamic we discussed earlier. Who in this play is arrogant enough to call a living person a thing and compare their background to actual garbage?
You absolutely nailed it if you said Professor Higgins. Once again, this perfectly highlights his ultimate unforgivable arrogance toward Eliza. He sees himself as this grand creator and her merely as his raw material. Excellent job remembering those intense character dynamics, heroes. You guys have worked incredibly hard during this bootcamp explainer, and your dedication is truly showing.
So, are you ready to conquer the exam, hero? Think about what we've done today. We've transformed intimidating vocabulary into everyday ideas. We've turned grammar into straightforward math. We brought literature to life, and we decoded those tricky reading strategies. You have the tools, you have the clear roadmap, and you absolutely have the capability. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. What will be the very first study step you take when you open your Upstream B2 book today? Take that next step, stay focused, and go ace that exam. I'll see you next time.